the knife did stab into the paper right here. Like, it didn't stick. But I mean, what are the odds of this thing sticking? Like, I've thrown this thing probably 40 fucking times, and it's an x-acto knife. It's not meant to be thrown like a dart. I don't have any. I need to get darts. I need to get a dart. But I mean, it did slash the paper here. It stabbed it and then fell. Phantom, Requiem for the Phantom. Phantom, Requiem for the Phantom would be worth watching again. I know you hate B-Train, but Phantom is easily the best looking show they've made. Phantom has a pretty amazing soundtrack too, which is strange because it's not even a Yuki Kajiura OST like most B-Train shows. The characters in the series are probably the biggest draw, and I know you're not into dubs, but Phantom has a pretty great dub. Phantom was one of B-Train's later series, it's from 2009, and it feels as if the people who worked on it learned from several mistakes that past B-Train series had. Phantom is the least B-Train anime that B-Train made, and I've seen all of their anime series. Now, more than one person recommended this show. In fact, in the time since making that video about recommending me anime that I've dropped, it's gotten well over 1,000 comments. Most of them are repeating the same shows. Most of the ones that are on that dartboard up there were recommended by a lot of people. Now, that's not to say that those are all the shows that I'm going to cover in this series. I don't know why anyone assumed that that was going to be all of them when I said that this was an ongoing series that could last forever. But anyways, the reason I chose this particular comment is that he keeps mentioning B-Train. Now, for those who don't know, I used to have a blog called I Hate B-Train, dedicated to shitting on shows by Studio B-Train. Studio B-Train was a subsidiary of Production IG that was led by this guy. I don't remember his name right now. It's been a long time. But the guy who started the studio intended for it to be a hospital for animators because he came up with the idea while he was in the hospital and he wanted to make it sort of a training ground. So like most of the people who worked there were new to the anime industry. A lot of them were being trained to work for Production IG. And the like overall feeling of the studio is that it was like, from what I've understand, it's kind of a laid-back place. They're known for the fact that they would come up with all their shows were like original. Almost none of them were adaptations, although Phantom is an example of an adaptation, but one that's pretty different from the original source material. But like usually they did original anime and they would like literally get drunk and come up with concepts for shows. Like they said that when they made up Madlax, they just like had a meeting where they were all wasted and came up with the plot for it. Now, the thing about B-Train is that stylistically, their shows are very different from other anime. They have sort of a film aesthetic to them, but they are terribly, terribly animated. They have just the shittiest, like, both the shittiest animation and the shittiest film techniques. For like, the visual style, while unique, is like, a lot of the times shots are just sideways or upside down for no reason. Like, just not even like looking cool. They're just weird and like in a bad way. And the shows just tend to suck in really funny ways. Like a lot of them are awesomely bad, which is why I had that I Hate B-Train blog. So when Phantom came out, it was right at a time when I was first realizing my hatred for B-Train. And the first episode I thought was just unbearably stupid. I hated all the dialogue. I hate that it's all this like aloof, meaningless dialogue, the kind of stuff that I was complaining about when I talked about Kisniver, that I was afraid that show was going to be. Like, that's kind of what this show was. Like, lots of dialogue that's about, like, oh, I feel this pain lingering inside me kind of thing, like that kind of shit. And, like, mysterious, vague character type stuff. And, like, the thing with B-Train shows is they'll do lots of gunfights. They love to have guns, like, characters with guns, and, like, they never animate muzzle flashes or people getting hit with bullets. So you'll always see, like, someone pointing a gun, and, like, you hear the sounds of it, but there's nothing to indicate bullets coming out, and then people just kind of go, ugh, and die with no, like, blood or, like, impact or anything. They just straight up don't animate it. Like, their shows are just, they're super fucking goofy to look at. And Phantom was one of those examples where it had all these weird sideways shots, music that's always turned up way over everything else. Like, for whatever reason, they always have the music blasting over everything else in their shows. So to me, Phantom felt like the epitome of a B-Train show. It had all the same problems. But I've been interested because over time that show has gained quite a reputation. It's pretty well beloved by a lot of people, which I never expected. Like, when that show started getting praised, I was like, what, really, Phantom, you know? But then again, people have said the same thing about other B-Train shows. Noir was very popular when it came out. I think that show sucks. So, but what does make me interested in Phantom is that it's actually based on a visual novel written by Urobuchi Gen. Now, Urobuchi Gen, at the time that Phantom came out, was not a household name. The only anime he had written was Blast Rider, which is so ugly that I find it unbearable. But he is mostly a writer for Nitro Plus, and he's also like the co-founder of Nitro Plus, which is a gaming, like a visual novel game studio. So he's worked on a bunch of visual novels. There were 3 that he had written. Sayano Uta, Phantom, and another one whose name I don't remember. But Phantom was adapted to anime by B-Train. I believe Urobuchi Gen had a hand in the anime adaptation. He didn't write it himself, but he was a part of its production. So, you know, now that I am a fan of Urobuchi Gen, I've seen most of his work, I am curious about Phantom, and so I have some desire to give it more of a shot than I might have otherwise. So let's check it out. Alright, well, I can certainly say that episode 1 of Phantom Requiem was not nearly as bad as I remember thinking that it was when I watched it 7 years ago, which is not too surprising because I was a little shit back then who was very eager to hate on something like this. And I'm certain that I did not watch this entire first episode back then. I'm pretty sure I watched the first half and then skipped through the rest. The animation and shot compositions aren't as bad as I remember. They did animate muzzle flashes in this show, which was definitely not the case in Noir. Just all around, it's not as bad as other B-Train shows. But I also understand why I gave up on it so quickly, because the opening scene is fucking goofy. It's like, I honestly thought it was awesomely bad. Like, I was ready to burst out laughing. It's only like a minute long, but just the opening scene is very clearly trying to be this, like, really cool, badass, like, pulp scene. It's, like, in LA, on, like, a house by the beach, and this assassin guy shows up, and he's killing all these people without even looking at them. But, like, the level of disconnect between how cool the scene is trying to be, and how cool it actually is because of the animation and pacing and staging of the scene, is really laughable. Like, it's playing like this pulse-pumping music while the characters are kind of like standing around and changing positions, and it just looks really goofy. So the opening scene and the ending scene both were like that. All the scenes that were in this house on LA with the main characters like pulling off this hit was really hilariously presented. The other stuff was like the midsection of the episode tries to go for more of this like foreboding tone, where it's like setting up who the main character is and like this organization that he's being made a part of. And it kind of feels like it wants to be like a Techno Lies or something, like this slow sort of mysterious feeling. But again, it just doesn't have the chops for that. Like the directing is, and the animation and the coloring and everything is just not that good. It's definitely from the era of bad digital effects work where like, they would just like, there's one scene where like 2 characters are talking next to a car, and there's like this filter put over everything to be like a sort of like yellow light, like this, like I guess they're supposed to be under a street light, but it's just this shitty looking yellow gradient filter over the whole scene that, like, that was a lot of anime did that in the late 2000s, and it was like, it was a hideous time for low budget anime. Thankfully it's not as much of a practice anymore, and digital effects have gotten way better. But yeah, it's like, it's definitely not pretty. It's not nearly as ugly as I thought it was, but it's not pretty. The dialogue is not nearly as cringy as I thought it was. It still is very, like, chunibyo, though. Like, the main characters are named Ein and Zwei, and they work for a guy called Scythe Master. for like an evil organization, and like all their dialogue is just like aloof bullshit. I think it's really hilarious that the ending theme is by ALI Project or Ali Project. I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce it, but like I've always considered that band to be like audio Chunibyo. They're like if you somehow could distill the gothic Lolita aesthetic into an instrumental, that would be an Ali Project instrumental. And then the vocals are like these weird staccato. I used to call them prog vocals back when I first found out about the band in like the late 2000s, because they're just all over the place. It's like singing in bizarre, out of key time signatures and shit. It's bizarre. It's really weird. I find it unlistenable. So the ending theme of this I thought was just total garbage. I hated the video as well. The whole thing definitely strikes me as like edgy, and I don't really like using that word, but it feels like it very much wants to be like this cool, dark thing, but the visuals aren't dark enough, and the tone doesn't really, I don't think it communicates its tone well enough. So it just kind of feels awkward. It's not terrible, but it's just kind of awkward. If this came out today, like with today's visuals, I probably wouldn't be that interested after this episode, like just based on the writing alone. The writing's not very strong. And the visuals feel incredibly dated. Like it feels very late 2000s. It has not held up well. It's the kind of show that you look at it and at no point do I think, man, this looks good for its time. I think, man, the 2000s were not the best era for digital effects work. And the character designs are just like fucking nothing. They're just like the most generic possible designs. Not to say that the girl isn't somewhat cute, although her face is just like, whatever. Like, most B-Train characters kind of look the same from like their main shows, with the exception of like the stuff that was like Yoshiyuki Sadamoto designs from like Dot Hack and shit like that. Like all their Girls with Guns shows and shit and this show all look exactly the same, and they're very drab and don't stand out. So I'll give this show a couple more episodes. I mean, I don't think it's like offensively bad, but it really needs to make a strong case in the writing if I want to keep watching this, because I was fairly bored by the end of that episode, and the action scenes are so goofy that I am more tempted to watch them ironically than I am to take them seriously. Okay, well, episode 2 I found incredibly goddamn boring. The majority of the episode was a training montage for the main character guy, who I don't understand, like, how I'm supposed to care about the characters in this show, because both of them have no memories of their past. They've been kidnapped by this organization, and they're being trained to become assassins. The girl is completely emotionless. She's just an assassin, that's all she is, and she's trying to train the guy to also be a completely emotionless assassin. So basically, neither one of them really has any goals of their own, other than the girl to just do her job, and the guy is just kind of along for the ride currently. It's sort of suggested that he's going to try and become ambitious, but towards what, we have no idea. Like 75% of the way through the episode, this woman comes and explains to him what their organization is actually about, which we had no idea up until now, which is that they're basically working for a group that's like the United Nations of Mafia. They're trying to unite all the mafia gangs under a rule of law by way of force through assassination. And he is now being trained to be the second assassin, with the main one, the girl, known as Phantom, being the super assassin who's made this all possible. And then she just kind of tells him, like, hey, even though it seems like you're a slave, you totally have freedom, and you should be ambitious, and maybe you can rise through the ranks or something. I don't know what the ranks are. I don't know what she thinks what is he going to become ambitious about in this particular field of work, which is just to kill people as part of, like, as directed by his boss. I really don't know. There's no real goals. There's no real character to the characters, and yet for some reason I had to watch the guy get trained for like 15 fucking minutes, even though I don't really care about him or what his training will bring out of him. So it was an odd kind of episode, and it also just, again, when this show tries to do certain things, like it just doesn't have the means to do it. And there were moments during the training montage. There was particularly one scene where I literally burst out laughing, and I wasn't sure if I was supposed to, because it was like the main guy like failing at stuff, and he's like going across this balance beam, and he just like kind of wobbles awkwardly and falls off, and I fucking lost it. Just all of it looked kind of awkward, and I really wasn't sure if it was going for that, because it doesn't seem like it would be. The show is always very straight-faced and serious, so I don't know why it would deliberately make this scene goofy. It just seemed like it was just animated badly. So yeah, like, I don't know, man. I really feel like this show is going for something that it does not have the means to grasp. Like, it's trying to be a style of, like, badass stuff that only really is badass when it looks cool, you know? Which is why, I feel like the style that B-Train always goes for is, like, something that other studios can do so much better, even without, like, good writing. Like, for instance, Kanan by PA Works is, like, exactly the kind of show that B-Train used to make, and PA Works, from what I understand, like, sprung out of B-Train, and, like, that show totally nailed it because it was fucking beautiful. It was awesomely animated. It had kick-ass fight scenes. You know, it was, like, girls with guns and the Yuri overtones, and all of that stuff worked, even though the writing was, like, all over the place. With a B-Train show, it's like, oh, look how cool this action scene is, but it's not cool. So, I'm repeating myself. Anyways. Alright. Let me tell you about one of my old favorites. One of my old favorite manga / shows. Gunslinger Girl. I don't know if you can see it. Got this one. Gunslinger Girl. Gunslinger Girl is a manga about this Italian organization working for the government, like a police force, that is dedicated to taking out mafia organizations and all these, like, really high-level criminals. And they end up instituting this program where they take little girls who have just been, like, on the verge of death and lost their family and lost everything. In the first pages, we meet Henrietta, a little girl whose family was killed. All of them were killed by this, like, by this guy who just basically, like, raped her all night and beat the shit out of her, and she was on the verge of death in a hospital bed. They take these little girls, and they completely wipe all their memories, turn them into cyborgs, and train them to be killing machines. They're assassins. Now, the dynamic of the series, and what makes it interesting, is that each of these little girls is paired up with an older man who is their fratello, their brother. And that guy is the one who trains them and takes them out on the missions. Basically, the point of using these kids, and the reason they have to be kids, is because kids are more susceptible to the brainwashing, and they're able to train them, and for the obvious reason that it's a bunch of lollies. This was a Dengeki Daioh manga. Pretty dark for one of those, and respectable enough that a lot of people watch this show without thinking of it as a lolly thing at all. It totally is one, though. But anyways, Henrietta here, what makes her interesting is that she really enjoys her job, and she really loves her brother, even though all of those emotions, she only feels them because of the fact that they've brainwashed her, that she's on this medication, that she's, been trained to do this. But the interesting question that brings up is, are those emotions still real? And are they any less felt by her? Even though it's something that, she can't control and that was sort of put on her, is that really any different from just feeling those emotions? And so, even though the circumstances surrounding these little girls are dark and horrifying, they actually really enjoy what they're doing. And it just creates this interesting dynamic. That's what makes the show cool. And then as you watch these characters struggle with these emotions, where each of them really wants to be the best assassin they can be and to impress their fratello, more of their, issues come from their failures in their attempts to, do their missions, or just the pain that they feel from, knowing that, not being able to distinguish whether their love is more romantic or more familial, or how they can deal with those feelings. There's a lot going on in the story. It's really interesting. It's really good stuff. So, the reason I'm talking about this is I just watched 3 episodes of Phantom. This is a show where these 2 assassins were brainwashed, forced to join this organization. They're working for a crime syndicate, but they're also fighting mafia people. And the dynamic is that they have no personalities, and they're being forced to become killing machines. That's it. That's the dynamic of the show, at least so far. Now, I can tell that where it's going is that it's going to be about the main character, sort of grappling with trying to, the fact that he's being treated as a puppet and he doesn't want to be, it seems. I don't know how they're going to explore that. I googled, when does Phantom Requiem get good? I didn't find any exact results. I found some people talking about what they like about the show, such as the themes of people being treated as puppets and stuff like that. Nothing I found really suggested that this was going to go in some incredibly deep direction, or in a way that is not obvious from these 3 episodes, each of which have been unbelievably predictable in a really annoying way. Because the first episode starts off showing us that the main character becomes a super assassin. We see him doing that job in the first episode. And yet, episodes 2 and 3 have been entirely dedicated to the process of him becoming that super assassin. All it's been doing is showing him training some more, having him interact with the girl whose personality is that she's a super assassin. Then he has to have his first kill, and he's fighting this guy. There's a scene where the guy, he points the gun at this dude. The dude, drops his gun and kicks it away, and he's, trying to sweet-talk him. And immediately you're like, well, he's obviously got another gun. And then the scene is the main character guy realizing that he's got another gun. He sees it, and then he's remembering all these lessons he was taught by the girl about how, some people will lie to you, and an assassin a warrior will always carry multiple guns. And I'm like, yeah, I fucking got it. I'm not a child. I get that that's what's gonna happen. He doesn't end up shooting the guy. They go through the motions of the battle for a little bit. He finally shoots the guy, and he's all depressed about it. I don't need to go through the motions of this. I understand. He becomes a super assassin reluctantly. I don't need to watch him be reluctant for 3 fucking episodes to get the point that he's gonna become a super assassin. Moreover, there's nothing else going on. There's nothing happening in the show other than training this guy to become a super assassin. Meanwhile, I'm thinking of Gunslinger Girl, and how by the end of episode 1, just the mere implications of what it means to transform these kids into robots and for them to enjoy being assassins is it's something that fucks with your mind, where you really have to think about every time you watch Henrietta in a situation, you're like, man, I feel bad for her, but at the same time, she's enjoying herself. It's so confusing to know what you want the characters to go through, because you love the characters, because they're instantly lovable, because they all have distinct personalities from one another. They're not boring, one-note, silent killers. Actually, what makes the show so off-putting is the fact that they're usually smiling when they're committing these crimes, and not in a corny way, in a way you totally get it. You get why the twisted mechanism by which their mind works, and that's what makes it disturbing and off-putting. And it's presented so well with the very realistic and no-nonsense style of both the manga and the anime, where it never tries to play it up as this dark, gritty, edgy thing. It's more presented straightforwardly, realistically. Basically what I'm getting at is that Phantom Requiem is boring. It doesn't have enough going on to keep my attention. It just feels like the same shit over and over again. It doesn't feel like it's going anywhere. It's not exciting to watch. The action scenes are fucking lame. They just take forever. And whole episodes will be dedicated to or half episodes will be dedicated to one scene. It just takes so long for anything to happen. I don't get it. I know the game, well, I don't know this, but I'm pretty sure Urobuchi Gen's games were all under 6 hours long. I don't know how the hell they stretched it into a 26 episode series. So maybe this is just the result of being super stretched out. I was reading some stuff online. I found some reviews that were saying oh, the first 10 episodes are all really interesting character building, and then episodes 11 through 20 are kind of boring stuff, and then the plot goes totally off the rails at the end, and it's a bunch of plot twists and a weird ending. That's what several of the reviews I read said, and I was so people aren't even really, it seems this way, people aren't even really happy with where this show ends up so much. What they really care about is the character development in the early episodes, which to me so far has been non-existent and boring. So I don't know if I'm misunderstanding the appeal of this show, if there's more to it than what I am getting, if it changes considerably later on, but the thought of trying to watch more of this is just I can't possibly put myself through it. It is fucking boring. And I'd just kind of rather be watching Gunslinger Girl. So, apologies to the commenters who wanted me to watch this show. I don't think I'm going to continue with it. I'm starting to wonder if maybe the board of second chances is actually some kind of self-torture I'm inflicting on myself. I mean, I did drop all of these shows, and now I'm trying to give them more of a chance. I mean, a lot of them I dropped a long time ago, so... Oh, buddy. I don't know.